Hello and welcome to another edition of The Nation. I'm Jared Ratnam, and today we'll take a look at the lives of people with disabilities. When we talk about people with disabilities, every time we talk about it or there's a debate about it, there's always these cliched questions that come out about what are we doing about blind people who are going out there and begging. It's usually that there's nothing beyond that. And to talk about the rights and also a strategic approach which is now needed in this country for disability issues in Malaysia, we have YB Senator Padmawati Krishnan, who's joining us once again right here on Bernama TV. YB, a very good day to you and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me again, Gerard.
You know, it's interesting that we are off the airwaves when we were talking.
Right.
You did say that all people talk about is when you debate about issues of people with disabilities, it's usually issues that are always talked about, the same old thing. Why are blind people begging? You know, things like that. And of course, we have to look beyond this with regards to this. Yeah, and you're going to walk us through various guidelines, rules and regulations, of course legislation with regards to people with disabilities. But when you look at what's happened in the 80s, 90s, every decade in these countries, do you think there's a significant change in terms of what people with disabilities have?
Well, yes, I would say yes, there has been changes, but the changes have been very minimal. Let me take you back into the time where disabled people's interests were cared for. This was way back in 1946 when the Department of Welfare was set up.
Right, this is 1946, yeah.
46, still under the British administration. And there the Department of Welfare was set up mainly to care for workers, you know, the workers that they brought from other countries and who were working in the plantation and tin mining areas, to look after the health of them, their health. And then slowly the the care went to their families, and that's how the welfare part of it, the family and the health and the social welfare of the family came into the picture. So ever since then, even during that time, a lot of voluntary work in terms of serving the needs of the marginalized and the disadvantaged group was done by NGOs. And very much so now.
Right.
But over
back
time,
then in the
40s,
yeah.
yes. And then ever since then and until now, although the nation had gone through so much of years of progress and advancement in all other fields, somehow caring for persons with disabilities has still remained under the Department of Welfare.
But by putting someone like you in Parliament, does it make a difference?
Well, I think yes, because I'm able to voice out the actual situation as it is and what needs to be changed.
Right. I'm not talking about the fact that you can voice things out. You know, I'm sure you do a good job at that. But do people listen?
Well, we have to make them listen. And I think from time to time, if we bring up why we need these changes, I think the government will listen. And okay, over the years, things have developed, but very minimally only. Back, schools have started. It was during the British time that the schools for the blind were started. You know, one in Johor and a training center in Penang. Then schools for the deaf. And they all were run by voluntary organizations. Then came caring for a person with disabilities. Welfare benefits started. Giving out help to help disabled persons improve their lives. So, but then the needs of disabled persons have diversified. Now the children who are born with disabilities, they need early intervention, they need to go to schools, and then after finishing school, you have to find employment, and you have to get on with life, participate in community life, get accessible transport.
Right. And accessible transport is one whole area on its own that we should talk about, because I don't see, although they say that a lot is being done with regards to accessible transport, I certainly don't see that. And every time I go to a shopping mall, not a shopping mall, a street filled with shops, I notice one thing: the pavements are never the same level. It's always at different levels, and these are things that brings about red flags as to how much is being done for people with disabilities. Now, yesterday, while I was scrolling through my Facebook page, I saw this page of a little girl without limbs, eating with a spoon and how hard it is for her to eat with a spoon, but yet she was happy. And I put a little caption on my Facebook page. I shared that and I said, you know, I should stop complaining.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, when I see a child like this, the girl is probably around 4 or 5 years old. Are there adequate schools to give them all the equipment and the learning material they need?
Yeah, you see, for the blind and the deaf, you know, a lot more has been done. But the physically disabled, there are, you know, schools that are still not very accessible.
Right.
Although the building bylaws have been passed many years ago, we find that, you know, these are the things that, you know, yet to happen. A lot of things are in place on paper and on documentation, but the implementation, the carrying out, the enforcement of it is not there. So when I think the people are slowly opening up into bringing their children, you know, admitting them to schools. But then again, when you look at from the school's point of view, we still have complaints from parents who say that there are schools that are reluctant to admit their children into the schools because they say the school is not equipped. So where do you complain? Who makes the move to make all these things happen?
Right.
You know, it still goes back to the government, and still, if it goes back, it is not under the purview of the Ministry. I'm sorry, with the Department of Welfare. This
it's
is
not under the purview.
Yes.
No. So education doesn't come under the purview of the Department of Welfare.
Correct.
What comes under the purview of the Department of Welfare? Just so we have a clear understanding as to what these people are meant to do.
Yeah. Like, you know, welfare benefits, like, for example, you know, the welfare benefits for families who have got persons with disabilities, the EPC, disabled worker allowance, although this employment, you see, a disabled person who earns 1,200 or less, I've got an incentive of 300 ringgit. That is paid out by the Department of Welfare. And then they've got assistance to employers who provide modification to the workplace. Yes, to take in disabled employees.
Right. So how much would go out for, say, to put together a workplace or to renovate a workplace for someone with
it depends. It depends on, you know, how the building is situated. Maybe they need a ramp, they need a toilet, and you know, a covered car park. So these are the ones, you know, but the money that they spend is tax exempted. So, you know, other benefits that come from welfare are the appliances.
Right.
You know, people can apply for wheelchairs if they cannot afford wheelchairs, crutches, other, you know, living aids, like artificial limbs. You know, all these things you can are provided by the Department of Welfare. So mainly welfare related and, you know, assistive appliances. These are the things that come under the purview of
when you talk about the welfare department and how it has evolved, has it seen a lot of changes in terms of benefits or services being put out there for people with disabilities? And let's be honest with this, you know, always when you do a show, you always caution as to what you can say or what you can't say. But when it comes to people with disabilities, how much is being done? And, you know, it's best that we hear it from the horse's mouth. Not that I'm calling you a horse, but
I was born in the year of the horse anyway.
Born in the year of the horse. It brought us so many problems last year.
Okay.
I mean, services, has it evolved? 1946, this department was started.
Yes. But one thing, there's progress in the community-based rehabilitation centers. Yes, we have got about 445 CBR centers. In Malay, you call them Pusat Dalam Community, Pemulihan Dalam Community, where the children who have got who are disabled and young adults do go to the center, and this has been is under the purview of Department of Welfare. And here they try to identify as many disabled people, get them registered according to where they are, instead of them going to the officer. So the services at PDKs are good. In terms of benefits, the welfare assistance is still rather low. I brought up in the parliament, asking for an increase in the welfare allowances.
Right.
Currently they're getting 150. So
150 a month.
Yes, to go up to 300. And also for the disabled workers allowance to be raised from 300 to 500. But there was only a minimal increase announced in the 2015 budget, which is just a 50.
You did talk about that the last time you came here. You were not too happy with the allocation within the 2015 budget.
Yes, but then again, the welfare benefits is not the only thing that's needed by persons with disabilities. No, like I said, a lot of other areas
So with
as well.
something like this, you say you were not happy with the allocation given.
Yeah.
Did you write into the
yes, I brought
relevant parties, or did you
no,
write
I
into the
brought it
Prime
up
Minister?
again in the December session. I brought up asking the government to increase it in the the supplementary budget. And usually, and now after the floods and all that, there's going to be a revision, and I think they're going to reallocate. But I do hope that the allowances will see some increase from the 50 ringgit.
Right. When you go out there, when you talk to people with disabilities, what is the message, or what is the kind of feel that you're getting from the ground, from these people, or the tone of these people? Every so often they've got something to say, and when you speak to them, what do they usually say?
Yeah,
what are their concerns?
Yeah, it depends on whether the person I speak to has exposure to disability, in the sense that either they have someone in the family or extended family who has a disability, or they know of a person who has a disability. But compared to the majority of people who have got no idea about the life, how a person with disability lives, like be it a person with Down syndrome, or blind person, or deaf, or those with some rare disease resulting in disability, or physical disability. They always think, okay, we need to do something, we need to help. Oh, they ought to be helped. These are the things you receive. The kind of feedback you receive. Still, they see persons with disabilities as someone who need to be looked after, and needs things need to be put right. Oh, he can do this, that, so that they can fit into the mainstream society. But no, what disabled persons need is, the environment must be modified or must be suited in order to accept and enable persons with disabilities to live within the community. So this is where a person has an impairment. The disability comes about when the person with an impairment interacts with the environment. An environment can be physical environment or a social environment. Attitudinal barriers, like what I said earlier in the early interview, attitudinal barriers are the worst. When people have closed minds and say that, oh, there's no possibility, like I said, the child, oh, we don't have facilities in this school, so we cannot have this child in our school. And the employer saying, oh, I can't take you in because I do not have the facilities. But they fail to realize that the government has come up with a lot of programs, a lot of changes, legislation, the building bylaws. But who is there to tell them?
So things are being done by the government in order to ensure that these people live. I mean, they live decently, and they also live comfortably. But so there are these laws, enactments, and of course guidelines that are come up with.
Right.
Who sees them through?
You see, back again to why I still feel that the Department of Welfare. I mean, although they do provide services, these are the areas that do not come under the Department of Welfare. You see, currently we have the division, Department for the Development of Persons with Disabilities. In Malay, it's called Jabatan Pembangunan Orang-Orang Upaya, and this is placed under the Department of Welfare, under the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development.
Right.
So they do not have the jurisdiction to go and get all these things done. They do not, like I told you, schools, to make them accessible, workplaces accessible, to implement the building bylaws. So another department has to do it. I mean, another ministry has to do it.
Right.
So this is why, I feel that we need some form of change.
So the form of change, should the form of change start with the, of course, welfare department?
Yeah, we have to restructure. Yeah, I think I'll delve into that a bit later. So I think that the welfare department still has a role as far as persons with disabilities are concerned, in looking after, like what I say, in their immediate well-being.
Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll come back and talk about statistics. Does the welfare department have enough statistics with regards to people with disabilities, and of course, what is the current situation of persons with disabilities in Malaysia? We're going to be talking about that when we come back right here at The Nation. I'm Jared Ratnam. Stay with us. We're currently speaking to YB Senator Padmawati Krishnan with regards to people with disabilities in Malaysia. Thank you very much for staying with us.
Isu semasa dan terkini industri kreatif tanah air. Perkembangan muzik tempatan. Lensa anak seni. Aksi layar perak. Tanpa gosip dan sensasi, semuanya disisipkan selama setengah jam dalam Tedi Sini, bukan sekadar hiburan. Setiap Sabtu, jam 12.30 tengah hari, hanya di Bernama TV.
Kavita, Meling, dah set ke belum?
Sikit je lagi, Puan.
Apa menu kita hari ni?
Semua menu sihat. Ikan bakar, sup ayam, sayur-sayuran. Banyaklah.
Puan, banyaknya guna minyak. Bahayakan kesihatan lah.
Betul lah macam ni. Saya dah kurangkan separuh dari biasa ni.
Cuba rasa ni. Sedap tak?
Biar kurang masin, jangan lebih.
Betul tu. Kita kena kurangkan minyak, gula,
Garam dan santan dalam masakan. Barulah ramai pelanggan datang ke kedai kita.
Semuanya
sihat belaka.
Menyelami realiti, menjejaki masa, meninjau peristiwa, paparan kronikal kembara kehidupan, pelbagai keunikan juga pengalaman menarik. Segalanya disorotkan selama setengah jam dalam channel bernama setiap Ahad jam 9.30 malam hanya di Bernama TV.
Welcome back to Bernama Today's The Nation. Of course, at The Nation today, we take a look at people with disabilities and things that are being done for them. Well, having said that, what's important is certain things that we need to know as, of course, common people or people who want to get information about people with disabilities and what belongs to them, or is it the right term to use? Well, what is needed for them? I think that's more important.
Right, yeah.
But let's just talk about the International Year of Persons with Disabilities in 1981 and what happened then. Yeah.
I think that is, a watershed for a lot of things that happen, developments that happen, globally. People all over the world, disabled persons, were being cared for in institutions, and they were being discriminated against. A lot of things were not going right for them, and they started forming support groups and asking for their rights from the government. And the UN, the United Nations, took note of this and came up with. Every year they have an international year for certain issues. So
Right.
1981 was declared as the International Year of Persons with Disabilities. Those days it was called Disabled Persons, IYDP. And after that, I think a lot of countries took cognizance of the rights and the need for providing for persons with disabilities, to allow them to live like others within
Right.
the community. And as soon as that year was declared, a decade was announced, a decade for persons with disabilities. That was from 1983 to 1992. Okay?
It was
1982.
Yep.
And at the same time, World Program of Action was also drawn up and distributed to all the countries for them to follow,
Right.
to introduce programs and to allocate budgets for the development of persons with disabilities. And this is around the same time also where disabled people also gathered together and they formed a world body called Disabled People's International, advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. And even here, that was a time when many organizations, were mushrooming and also taking up issues for persons with disabilities. And after that, 10 years down the line,
Right.
you find that it was found that Asia Pacific was still lagging behind compared to Western countries in providing facilities and having the buildings accessible, have job opportunities.
Asian
and
countries,
education.
when you say Asian
Asia
countries,
Pacific, yeah.
Asia Pacific countries, yeah.
Yes, there are about 58 countries under Asia Pacific region, and like the West, like US, Europe, and all that, because they have been involved in war, and they have got a huge war veterans who are physically disabled, and there are a lot of such countries. These are the people who made the move to push for things in their own countries.
Right,
no?
right.
Yeah.
So, with what you're saying, the decade for persons with disabilities, of course, Malaysia recognized it, and how much of work happened then in that decade? Was it significant, the work done between 83 and 1992?
Yeah, okay. Around that time, I think they were looking at the buildings and all that first. So they helped draw up. I think the government did pay attention to the physical access, the physical environment, and the government came up with this uniform building bylaws.
Right.
Okay, which made sure that all new buildings have facilities for persons with disabilities, and this was passed in a parliament in 1990.
Right.
And now down the line, 25 years later, you find that the enforcement is still not there. Like what I said again, because there's no one particular body looking into the monitoring and implementation of this building bylaws. So as you go around, you would see, like the shopping malls, and then now the LRT stations. Only certain areas you'll find that there are facilities, but there is no seamless continuity for people to come out, for the blind, to have tactile.
If you want to see seamless continuity, there must be people from various stakeholders should come together and make this happen, isn't
Correct.
it? Yeah. So
Correct.
speaking of which, the decade of disabled persons was from 1983 to 1992, and then there was the Asia Pacific decade for persons with disabilities, which ran between 93 and 2002, followed by the second Asia Pacific, or rather decade for people with disabilities from 2003 till 2012. So it just went on for 30 years, and in 30 years there's no significant change. We just come up with names, and that's about it. So with the second decade and the third decade, which were very much focused on Asia Pacific, how much of work was done within Asia Pacific?
There are a lot of regional conferences, and this is a commitment which our government has given.
Yeah.
And there is currently, earlier on in the first Asia Pacific decade, there was a BIWACO Millennium Framework of Action. Also a document which outlines all the things that need to be done by governments, to help improve the lives of persons with disabilities. Then for the second Asia Pacific decade, there was something called an Incheon strategy. So Incheon strategy outlines 10 goals, and this is what has been adopted by our government, and they have planned out, put forward an action plan based on the Incheon strategy.
So after 30 years, we came up with 10 goals in Incheon.
Right. And the Incheon, and this Incheon strategy, like I told you, is in the action plan. But then again, who monitors how much is being done? Whether there's a periodic progress. Still, it goes back to the Department of Welfare. So do you think the Welfare Department is the one that should be doing this? No. Okay. In between, in the year 2008, we had the Akta Orang Kurang Upaya, or Persons with Disabilities Act. So we have this act, and this act was drawn up in preparation for Malaysia to sign the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And in this act, there is, it outlined the role of the government, the private sector, and NGOs in looking at all aspects, from health to recreation to sports, education,
health, recreation, sports, education,
employment, accessibility, and all. And then again, the enforcement of this act also belongs to various agencies. And under the act, also there was a recommendation for National Council on Persons with Disabilities to be set up.
Right.
So it was set up. This council was set up in 2008. Prior to this, there was an earlier National Advisory and Consultative Council.
So that was done away with for
Yes,
this council.
for this new council. So in this new council, there are 10 representation from persons with disabilities, whereas another 10 are from the various government ministries. So here, it was a good move, by the government to involve all other ministries to come and sit in this National Council on Disability. But then again, from 2008 until now, we still find that a lot of things are not being taken up by the various ministries. They always refer back to the Department of Welfare. They refer back to the
which is unfair.
Which by right, each of the ministries should look after their own.
Right.
Like Ministry of Transport
Okay.
should look after the issues regarding licenses, parking, modification of cars. And
But okay, when you talk about parking,
Yeah.
now parking will fall under a different ministry.
Right.
It won't fall under the Ministry of Transport. So these are where the grey areas
the
are.
JPJ, the Road Transport Department comes under the Ministry of Transport. Yeah, so it doesn't come under Welfare Department.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So here again, they come together for to meet, but then again, it is not the sentiment and the commitment and the passion is not there when at their own ministries. So this is why I really feel that we need a structural change. We need to come to a situation where there is one coordinating body, one coordinating office or department, whatever you may call it, which will make sure the Incheon strategy, the 10 goals of the Incheon strategy, which is under the national plan, and also the Act, the Disabled Persons Act, are all carried out.
Right.
Yes.
So there are 10 goals, and these goals, is there a deadline given as to when these goals are achieved?
No,
See,
they're
there's
not.
always at these conferences or get-togethers, there's always we should, we must, we will, but the follow-through
Correct.
is always a problem.
Yes,
Now, of course,
correct.
we're talking about the follow-through
Correct,
here.
yeah.
Now, with the ministries that are meant to be doing work, there's the Ministry of Transport. What other ministries would be directly involved in this?
Education, the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, Health Ministry, for early identification,
Right,
Ministry of Sports,
right.
Youth. The major. These are the major ministries. Yeah.
Right. So these are the major ministries,
Right.
and their work right now is to be getting a special team to work on stuff.
Human Resource Ministry as well.
Right. The
Yes.
Human Resource Ministry.
Yes.
So they should put together a small team in
Yes, correct.
to
In
look-
their own. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This would be ideal.
Is this happening?
Yes. It's not happening. So the Ministry of Education.
When it's not happening, seriously,
Yes, so this is
on
what-
my part, I don't know what questions to ask. It's not happening. So
Yeah.
how do we move forward like this? Yeah.
Right. So this is why I advocate for a strategic restructuring
Right.
of what is currently available into what is doable and achievable. And let us. We must diversify and we must decentralize and bring it to the departments that are concerned.
When you look at it, through the looking glass, like when I see the news on certain stations, more so the national station, I see sign language being used. Are
Yes.
these all big steps, giant leaps?
Yes, but then again, they are only confined to certain programs only. They are only for the news, and I brought it up in the parliament to have sign language for all programs, discussion, forum, like our
So
program.
that will also bring about
Parliamentary-
jobs, isn't it?
Yep,
That
pardon?
will also bring
Ministry of-
about jobs.
Yes, will bring about jobs as well, and also it's under the Ministry of Multimedia Communication. Yes,
Right.
So everybody has to play the role. Sorry, I didn't mention all just now, but the life of a person with disability covers. It
Right.
cuts across the board.
Well, I will take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the situation of persons with disabilities and maybe work forward from there and what can be done. It's a very interesting topic that we're delving into, but interesting as it may be, we have to do something about it in order to take our nation to the next level. We'll come back and find out more right here at The Nation. Stay with us.
Apa kabar pemirsa? Salam dari Jakarta. Sebuah program kerjasama Kantor Berita Indonesia Antara dengan Kantor Berita Malaysia bernama kembali hadir menjumpai Anda.
Sedar tak kita tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, keadaan iklim yang tak menentu sekarang ni. Perubahan iklim meningkatkan kejadian kemarau, derebu, banjir dan ia menyumbang kepada perubahan iklim yang berlaku secara drastik. Inilah dia faktor-faktornya. Yang pertama, asap dari kenderaan. Yang kedua, penebangan dan pembakaran hutan. Yang ketiga, pembebasan asap dari industri perkilangan. Dan yang keempat, pelupusan sisa buangan. Ini usaha yang Pak Abu buat, iaitu yang pertama, menanam pokok. Yang kedua, mengurangkan atau tidak menggunakan beg plastik. Yang ketiga, mengasingkan bahan buangan. Yang keempat, mengitar semula bahan buangan. Dan yang kelima, memilih barangan dari bahan kitar semula. Ada banyak lagi usaha yang boleh kita lakukan. Antaranya, kurangkan pemanduan kereta persendirian dan banyakkan penggunaan kenderaan awam.
Anda adalah sebahagian daripada penyelesaiannya.
Menongkah batasan masa, mengupas isu semasa, menjadi saluran pelbagai suara. Segalanya baru dan benar di Berita Bernama TV.
Hello and welcome back to The Nation. I'm Jared Ratnam, and today at The Nation we speak to YB Senator Padmavati Krishnan. She's here to talk about people with disabilities and what should be done and what has been done, what should be done, what we can do to better their lives in Malaysia. Well, coming back to what we were talking about, before we even talk about all this more important detailed stuff as to what can be done and to give the common person a better understanding of what needs to be done. Every time we watch TV, there's always some program dedicated to some kid or some a disabled person living in a home alone. You know, a whole camera crew is there. 5 people goes in, looks at the person, cries, they say a prayer, they give a little something out. Do these things, mean anything to people with disabilities?
Yes, a lot of people are disgusted with such kind of approach,
Yeah.
because it promotes the charity model and
like you
expect
go in
people
there,
to
a kid
sympathize.
with dirty clothes lying on the ground, and it's all very pathetic. And here comes the white knights with the TV cameras and some campers to give them. So for people with disabilities, is it something that's meaningful or not?
No,
not
at all. Yeah. We'd rather, the TV and the media highlight issues as they are and find solutions. Talk to people and highlight why are such things happening when we have laws. Who is responsible? I mean, who is supposed to look after? Be it the local authority or some other agency,
right?
Or the immediate community, which is supposed to look into all this.
Right.
So rather than focusing on the negativities and always extremes, what you mentioned is right, Virat, about the pathetic appearance, of portrayal of persons with disabilities. On the other end, putting disabled persons on a pedestal,
right.
The person has done well, a person does well despite the disability. We'd rather they highlight the challenges. What are the challenges faced by the person? Like, for example, a student who had scored, 5 distinctions with disability. Whether or not there were enough support services. The school was the schooling environment and the co-curricular activities, the assistive devices available for the child to progress to that level. We find that in reality, the child would have struggled.
Right.
And with parent support or some NGO or someone would have been there to help the child achieve such a status. So here, this is where the joint responsibility, the obligations as stated out in the Persons with Disabilities Act must be employed. So I hope that the media can help highlight all this, go into the details, into the reality of things, of what should be and what is there out in the open. I mean, the negative things that are happening because.
Right. See, but here's the thing, that the media has to find a balance between doing research and highlighting the negativity, and then this may fall back on certain quarters, which won't be nice. So finding that balance, or we'll use a big word, equilibrium, is always a tough thing.
I know, but here it is not a matter of finding fault. It's not a matter of putting down anybody or putting down a department or criticizing, or it is beyond that. What disabled people are asking for and wanting is a life like others, to be able to live in a society and enjoy the opportunities, have the freedom of choice, to take a transport, to be able to go from the house and go and take transport from the house to go to attend a school, a school which they like, which may be nearer to their house rather than somewhere else. And these are the things that disabled people are asking for.
Right.
Where is the...
Instead of going to special schools, they want to go to normal schools, but these schools...
Yes, it depends. Special schools are also important. We also need special schools. There is integrated, classes, inclusive classes, and also a mainstream. Okay?
Right.
So, all these are necessary. It's not that there is one solution for persons with disabilities. They're just one lot, and this is what they need, and and a lot of people also think that they should be put in a place and cared for. No, they want to live like others in an ordinary community.
Right.
And the schools, the things are there. The Education Act has got regulations that the headmaster has got the power to provide the modifications, to modify a classroom.
So if the headmaster has the power to provide the modifications, who comes up with the money for these modifications?
We
are all well aware of the fact that certain schools don't receive
they can get it from the Ministry of Education.
Ministry of Education will fund that.
Correct. Funds that. And here, when we discuss at the macro level, at the policy making level, at the HQ, yes, they say yes, all headmasters should know about it.
Okay, saying if I'm a headmaster now and I see a need for me to modify my school based on the situation and based on the number of people with disabilities,
and the type of disability,
and the type of disabilities, so we want to make these modifications. How easy or how hard is it for a headmaster to write in and say? Is it as simple as writing a letter and saying
inform? It is. You inform the PPD, the department, in the state, the relation department, and they will write to the ministry, and it will be done.
So and I think there's not too much red tape, or there's no red tape at all. So you write a letter. Me as a headmaster, all I have to do, and if you're a headmaster, this may come across as information to you, write a letter saying that we have children or students with disabilities within the school. All that happens is you send the letter in, and you get whatever funds you need.
Yes. Yes.
So it's as simple as that, but it's not being used.
Not being used, and people are not aware. And I think when we at seminars, recently last year I attended a seminar in Ipoh, and the department, there was an official. He said all teachers should know about this. It is good news, good to hear.
Right.
Yeah, but then our teachers are aware, our headmasters are aware. Yeah.
So this is one of the problems, getting the information or bringing about awareness. Now, when it comes to jobs, we talk about jobs in the civil service, we talk about jobs in the private sector. How is have the private sector warmed up to the fact that you can have people with disabilities working within your organization?
Not all, only few. There are a few companies, and there are we still need awareness, and here the media can come in to help promote by doing more public service announcements to encourage the public sector and the private sector to take in persons with disabilities. Even I'll tell you the history behind this equal opportunities in jobs.
Right.
It was in 1988 that the government decided that at a policy level that 1% of the jobs should be allocated for persons with disabilities, both in private sector and the public. 1%.
Okay.
I mean, to start with, we're not saying that we're going to limit it to 1%. So, but then again, after which, there's no mechanism, there was no follow-up, there was no committee set up, to look into the needs.
Okay.
Back again to Department of Welfare. Back again to Department of Welfare, and then now the Human Resource Ministry under the Jabatan Tenaga Kerja. They've got scheme pendaftaran pekerjaan orang kurang upaya. That was established, thinking that will solve the problem, but it hasn't.
Okay, so what needs to happen? For me, I don't understand policies and how. Okay, you come up with say 1% needs of the workforce needs to be for people with
1% of the jobs that are available need to be offered. Yes.
Offered to people with disabilities.
Right.
So once we come up with something like that, what is the follow through? What should you say? A mechanism?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The mechanism should be. There should be a committee set up where in the Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Awam for government jobs, they should set up, and then they should look into all the jobs that are available, where are there vacancies, and send people who are trained, who are aware, who know about disability to go and interview people to take in to get them to jobs. I've got so many inquiries saying that inquiries after I became senator about people attending jobs for government interviews. And then they said, kegagalan, you don't qualify because you have not fulfilled the conditions.
Okay, so are these conditions then forwarded to them so they can work on these conditions the next time around?
It is just an outright, it's like a rejection letter.
Rejection
So
letter.
here,
a general rejection letter.
Yeah, so this is why I think we ought to have a proactive, a committee set up.
Right.
And also for the private sector under the Human Resource Ministry to set up to look into why people are not sustaining in their jobs, and then training, and then also goes back to education. There are a lot of them, people who want to work but who don't have the education, and then those who have got education, like what I said, fail because there is a kind of a mismatch and there is a gap that exists. We've got so many disabled persons coming out of colleges and universities every year.
Right.
But are they placed in jobs? Is there career counselling? The Ministry of Education, Higher Education, at the time, if it separated, came up with a circular in 2013 saying that all tertiary institutions should have a disability unit. Only some
all
have followed.
tertiary institutions should have a disability unit.
Yes.
Are we seeing it? At least
Only
let's just say 20%. Are we seeing it?
No, less than 20% have got it. So it is a circular, and then these are the things. Who is monitoring? Back again, this is why we need to restructure. We must have a department or an office of disability that must be looking into all this, so that decisions taken, important decisions, proactive decisions that are supposed to help persons with disabilities, it is not being carried out down the line.
Right.
And therefore, this is why you find frustrations. A lot of disabled persons and individuals and organizations always bringing out. It's not that they are complaining, because having been coming my background from the NGO experience, it is, if it's not happening, definitely people, a child will be asking, and definitely the child will be throwing tantrums. I mean, not to say that we all are throwing tantrums, but then why all this commitment? We have made our commitments, we have had our Disabled Persons Act, we have a signatory to the International Convention, and why are things still not happening?
Right.
Even I'm still asking, and we'll come to the solution when at the end of this program.
So we'll take another break. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, of course, we'll walk you through certain solutions that Senator Bhatmawati has come up with. We hope to give you or shed more light on the situation, just so no one here wants to point fingers or to give people problems. But what we need to do here is understand the situation or the magnitude of the situation. We'll come back just after a short break and find out more right here at The Nation. Please stay with us.
kasih. Sama-sama. Terima kasih. Sama-sama. Terima kasih. Sama-sama. Terima kasih. Sama-sama. Sama-sama.
Satu cerita, satu bangsa, satu Malaysia. Menongkah batasan masa, mengupas isu semasa, jadi saluran pelbagai suara. Segalanya baru dan benar di Berita Bernama TV.
Hello and welcome back to The Nation. Our final segment, we'll try to give you a bit of a wrap up as to what we're talking about. We're talking about people with disabilities and really what needs to be done for these people. Having said that, what we were talking about just now, always comes back to the strategies that are being put forward, more so the insurance strategy. So what do we need to understand about this insurance strategy that will be of which would bring about some awareness?
Yeah, okay. There are 10 goals of the insurance strategy. I wouldn't go to all. Besides poverty reduction and enhancement of employment opportunities for persons with disabilities, creating a conducive environment, physically, accessible. That there's also mention about the goal 7, which particularly interested, is ensuring disability inclusive disaster risk reduction and management. Talk about disaster risk. Okay, so you know that recently we had a huge flood. Okay, what is being done about in such disaster or kind of unexpected calamity happens, and are we prepared when it comes to saving persons with disabilities?
Right.
So, has anyone looked into it?
Are we prepared or are we drawing blanks?
Yes.
These are the questions we
even
need to
like
ask
emergency evacuation in times of like sometimes there's a sinkhole or fire in terms of fire. How do you evacuate people? And sometimes we have tremors, earthquakes, and how do you evacuate a person with disabilities? With a high-rise building, is that shoot or something? What are the practices in other countries? In fact, the UN has come up with a module. Some studies, they've done studies and they have come up with programs and training programs for people who are interested in providing services for, in helping disabled victims of such happenings.
It's interesting how we throw this word around, bilateral relations, especially with other countries, how we need to have a good relationship. Of course, the closest to us with a really good module would be Japan, okay. Yes. There's also Australia. Yes, they've all got fantastic models. As friends, saying if you're Japan and I'm who I am.
Yeah.
I'm asking you for help. Can you come see if we can do something? How can we better this? And can you help us implement a system? Is that a very hard thing to do?
No, it won't be. It won't be difficult. But then again, I would also think of other possibilities, like you using the UN agencies that are available in our country.
Right.
Like the UNICEF. For UNDP.
Of course,
UNDP.
when we use these agencies,
Yes.
sometimes people say they have vested interests, so on and so
No,
forth.
not really.
They
Not really,
don't.
but here,
But
here I think Malaysia has been a member of United Nations since 1957.
Yes.
So I think we have a very good rapport and very good services. I mean, we've been
I've
served
spoken
well.
to people from UNICEF, and I've met them, and everyone's willing to help, come up with statistics, whatever we need.
Right,
But for some reason, we're not moving forward. So this is
so I think talking about disaster reduction, I think we have to engage them. We can engage since something available close to home, and we have a UNDP office here, and I think we should explore this area, how we can get their cooperation into training our the civil defense, the fire and rescue department, the police, the other voluntary organizations, individuals who are interested.
But as a senator, don't you think this, we call this the last mile before 2020? Don't we think that already should be in check?
Yes, but I think disaster waits for no one. I mean, it can happen at any time.
Right.
Be it flood or fire. And I think it's better to be prepared than face a situation where we lose lives because people cannot be evacuated. So in looking at the whole program, I mean, I think the nation of Malaysia is interested in upgrading this rescue services. So we have to include the component. That's why it's called disability inclusive. It is in the Incheon goal.
Right.
Yeah. We have to incorporate as well. And just like that, all other programs also, I hope that it also is inclusive of persons, needs for the persons with disabilities.
So what we're doing in order to make their lives a little better, or people with disabilities, what they don't want is for us to mollycoddle them and say, oh, come, let me take you here. They don't need things like this. They just need to be integrated into society. And how we do that, it is very important. It has to be seamless. Many stakeholders should come together and see how we make this seamless. From walkways to getting onto a bus. You should be able to, from here to get home, it should be a comfortable ride for you if you were to take public transport. That should be the barometer. So in closing, how would you like to end this conversation? What kind of message would you personally like to give out? From here to your home, would it be comfortable for you if you were to
Currently, no. If I were to take public transport, well, I don't see any bus stops along the way.
Right.
Secondly, no LRT station along this Jalan Tun Razak. I mean, this stretch.
There's one, the stretch.
I'll have to find my way to that, bus station or stop before taking public transport. So that's not ready yet.
Right.
Yeah, what I would like is, you see, every time we listen to our Prime Minister, he always says, we're an inclusive program, inclusive. I really like the word inclusive, and I would like to expand it to, instead of inclusive being like between the haves and have-nots, the urban and rural, inclusiveness in terms of racial inclusion, racial integration, I also would want it to be stretched to include persons with disabilities, because we are all in the same community. It's all of us is what forms Malaysia. So it's also related to the One Malaysia concept, and I feel that all programs and all plans should be inclusive, i.e. inclusive of persons with disabilities also.
So it should be inclusive of persons with disability, and I'm sure we'll get Senator to come back once again to walk us through other areas.
Just one more point only, that I really wish in the Rancangan Malaysia ke-11 or the 11th Malaysia Plan, the needs of persons with disabilities, a lot of recommendations have gone in. I've also written in for the requirements to be included, and that allocation is being given to all ministries to be spent for development of persons with disabilities. And finally, what is really, really, really needed is an office for disability issues.
Right.
a special office, and welfare department can still carry on, like what I say, about giving the the social welfare benefits and assistive aids and the like, but to look into to coordinate the other programs, as stated in the Disabled Persons Act, in the building bylaws and all that. To coordinate it, we really need a department which is which has to stand by its own and with enough staff to carry out all this.
So let's stop blaming the welfare department, and let's see how we can better this problem by putting together a special department to work with problems, or one-stop center.
No, it's not. One-stop centers have been mentioned, and again, no, we need a system, a structure, and it's not only for the administrative, for monitoring and implementing. Only then things will work. If there's monitoring, implementing, and setting the necessary KPIs, key performance indexes, and accountability, only then we can have the report ready. We have ratified the Convention on the Persons with Disabilities, and we have not sent our state report yet. So at least if you set up this office, that will do the work for you, and then you can gather all the information that's necessary. How far are we? How much have we implemented? And how far to go? All this can be submitted as a state party report at the UN meetings.
Right. So all these things need to be done, and when she comes back the next time, hopefully in a couple of weeks or in a month, we'll walk through these things, all these legalities and procedures that need to be adhered to. On that note, we'd like to thank Senator Padmawati for making her way here to the studios to share with us all the problems faced by people with disabilities. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more at The Nation. I'm Jared Ratnam. You have a great day ahead.